around for so long. And even like in the 20s, the Olympics were still held in the open water. So Johnny Weissmuller, who played Tarzan in the movies, the Tarzan movies back in the day, he was also like the best swimmer in the world. And he raced in the open water and talked about swimming with his head high and his legs low, like this Tarzan style stroke or water polo style stroke. And that was like the origin of competition in the open water. Now, yeah, things have changed over the years, but largely a lot of the mechanics stay the same. So the natural connection to the open water is still very forefront there. A lot of people have not explored that. So I encourage you guys to get out there, especially now when all of the open water is open and almost all of the pools are closed. The open water is kind of like trails. Like if you did every single run, walk, workout on a treadmill, you come to know what to expect, right? It's gonna be the same thing every single day for the most part. Yet you go to the trails, you've got a lot of dynamic stuff you can explore, different days, different weather, so on and so forth. That's the open water. The open water is your dynamic, ever-changing environment that makes it really rewarding and really fun. And we've got a massive playground here in our backyard for all of us in San Diego. So for open water, the first thing I would say, take the pressure off yourself to perform to any sort of expectation, any goal. Try to scrap that. So your focus right now should be out there to just enjoy yourself and have fun. So getting in, I think the easiest piece to think about is the fun. And number two, okay, how do you do it safely? Find people to do it with. And especially right now when we're probably all craving some social interaction, find a buddy or two you can go with. And if you want to still be extra safe, you can socially distance. You can wear masks on the beach, of course. But there is that accountability piece of being out there together that can take away any potential fear, negative thoughts that come in that will derail that experience and probably keep you out of the water in the future.
Kind of parlay that into motivation and stay uplifted spirit right now. Like how have you been working with people on how they're feeling? I mean, obviously COVID sucks. It's such a world that every day it's changing and we see people's emotions going up and down, even in a rehab setting. It's like, I feel good one day. I feel like life's kind of normal today. And the next day I read something about what it's going to look like when school's open and I'm depressed. You know, I know how much the ocean means to you and I love it.
Yeah.
Every time I'm around the water, I feel better. So what a great thing to do, but I might not have the motivation just to get out the door and go meet someone. What does that look like? And how do you kind of encourage people?
Yeah, so the motivation is interesting. It's kind of built into itself. Once you get there, the hard work is done because you will take something from that experience. And what you'll take is some sort of growth, some sort of new energy and inspiration. But to get there, I do think, yeah, it's one of the harder points. So if I can inspire you to take that first plunge, literally, I can tell you that when you're in the open water, you have to be present. So in that being present of only focusing on how do I do my best to literally survive in this open water, and hopefully more than that, you're blocking out all the other stuff that could be affecting you negatively. So this is your detox. This is your flush. This is for you to have a fun experience that can kind of detach from the reality of the rest of the day or what's going on right now and the climates of the world. So motivation is look forward to that. This is your therapy. It's a free therapy that's good for your mind, your body, your spirit, for everything to get there. So for me, it's taking that first step, calling a friend saying, hey, do you want to go at 11 a.m. to La Jolla Shores and meet me? Or Glorieta Bay, 11 a.m., let's go there. So motivation, be an accountability partner for someone else, knowing that they also probably need the same thing. We're all probably feeling very similar to different degrees. Just make that first step, get out there, then the hard work's done, and you know you're going to be fed from that.
Well, I know you're not a doctor, but can I get COVID? Can I get COVID in the water? Is it in the ocean? What, you know, do I wear a mask? Am I wearing a mask while I'm swimming out to the buoy and back? Like, talk to me about that.
Yeah, I've seen some pretty funny memes on that. Do not wear a mask in the water, which I hate that I have to say that, but don't do that. You cannot contract COVID in the water, at least not at an accelerated rate the way you could on land. Is it possible? I'm sure it's possible. It's possible anywhere right now, it seems. Yeah. However, I would argue that being in the sunshine, the vitamin D, being in the salt water, you probably have a significantly less chance of contracting anything. Maybe not from the water. There's probably some allergy stuff that could happen, or some bacterial things. But your risk of COVID, I would say, is significantly lower in the water. Again, I'm not a doctor, but I have found some cool science on that, saying that now it's a super safe place to be right now. Maybe the safest place to be right now.
Yeah, I based on that question, I looked up some research and was trying to find anything and everything, right? And
Yeah.
one, they're not doing a double-blind study on people in the ocean getting COVID.
Yeah.
Number two is I think it's because people are not coming into the hospitals and tracking it back to being with,
right,
being in the ocean. The bigger thing is I have seen large groups get together and go surfing, and I think that's obviously a personal decision, but I think the best thing is get to the beach with people that you spend time with in your household, and maybe you're meeting a friend there, and okay, well, let's meet out in the water. We don't need to drive in the same car and so on and so forth. But you talked a little bit, I heard you say Glorieta Bay. I mean, are you pretty aware of what's open and what's not?
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting. Maybe 3 weeks ago or 2 weeks ago, for that matter, it was all very unclear. And are the bays open? Are the lagoons open? The ocean was like kind of open, but the parking's not open. So from my understanding, all the open water is open per se. However, parking might be restricted in most of the spots, which is fine. There's probably workarounds with that. The bays are open. The lagoons are open again. So as far as getting back into the water, and maybe this might be your next thought, Bryan, is find a spot where you feel comfortable. Because this is not the time to try to impress anybody or prove anything. You've been out of the water at least 2-3 months. And for many of you guys, maybe it was last fall. So it's been a while.
Yeah.
So take your time going in. If you have any bit of reservation or fear surrounding that, go to the bay, go to the lagoon, go to La Jolla Shores, super calm entry point, 300 days out of the year kind of thing. So don't go outside your comfort zone. Find those places that you know it's kind of a safe bet in your mind, and you can literally create a safe environment as well.
I love that, because I always started off in Coronado. You know, I knew it was safe and comfortable. What I have seen is a lot of people jumping in the ocean, and they have these devices that are kind of like buoys. Do you have a recommendation on that? Something they wear?
Yeah.
One, it's visible. It lets the lifeguards see me. But if I'm not totally comfortable, I have something there. What are those?
Yeah. So like easy safety protocol. First thing, you want people to know you're in the water, meaning the people that are there. So if there's an active lifeguard, that's best case scenario. So maybe you base your choice around, okay, so where are there active lifeguards this time of day, this time of year, which right now there's more than there were, of course, like in the winter. Spring starts to kind of open back up. So find your active lifeguard tower, hopefully. And if there is one, go tell the lifeguard, tell him or her, say, hey, I'm getting in the water with a couple friends or by myself, or actually not by yourself, with a couple people. And I'm going to be doing parallels of the shore back and forth. Just so you know, I'm out there. They'll appreciate that. That's not like a dorky, embarrassing thing to do. Just keep some accountability that way as well. And then also, there's eyes on you. And then as far as visibility in the water from boaters, surfers, people on shore, you want to be bright, you want to be visible. Unfortunately, neoprene is black, historically at least it is, and it's crazy. I don't understand it. There should be neon wetsuits, but there are not hardly at all. So you've got your wetsuit. That's not going to help you be seen. You want to have a super bright cap, so a neon yellow, orange, pink, green, something that really stands out. And then as far as the buoy goes, what Bryan was referring to is like this inflatable buoy. It's about this big, maybe the length of your torso. It doesn't weigh anything. It's super light piece of, I don't know, some sort of plastic, I guess. You blow it up and you trail it behind you with a belt around your waist. Those are awesome, but those are only awesome and safe in calm water. So if you're swimming at Moonlight Beach, Grandview, Ponto, if you're going out in places where there's surf, do not wear one of those buoys, because it's buoyant. It's a buoy, so it wants to stay above the water. So if you have to dive under waves and surf, that thing will want to keep you up, and it becomes actually super dangerous. So you won't see people swimming with those in my group at Moonlight because of that exact reason. Not because we don't want the safety protocol, but it would be more of like a deficit than a benefit at that point. So bright colored stuff, tell the lifeguards, that's the first way to start.
That's such good advice, because I hadn't really thought about that. I just kind of did the natural assumption that, it's a great device. So
yeah.
So, and Caleb's the lifeguard, and he just tagged us and said for 10 years he's been a lifeguard and he agrees the heads up is great. So I love that concept as well. Hey, I'm going to be out there swimming. And if I'm a decent swimmer and maybe I get confidence that I don't need to tell anyone, I still think there's value in saying, hey, I'm going to be out in the water, keep an eye, just keep a peek on me every once in a while.
Well, hey, Brian, really fast to that effect, what I was going to say before I kind of caught myself,
yeah,
never swim alone. My number one rule is never swim alone. It's just not worth it. It doesn't matter if you're the super experienced stud or you're more on the beginner side, and regardless of conditions, you always want to have a partner out there. And even better if you can have like 3 people. So like yourself and 2 buddies, because what if something ever did go wrong or you panicked? You need to have someone there to help you. And a small team of people, there's kind of different roles and different hats you can wear within that. That can create a really, really productive, safe group. And you never have the chance to go down that negative path in your head. So I always say you have to swim with a partner, got to buddy up. Even in our groups, if we've got 50 people out there, we always have you pairing up at least in 2s, if not more. And I'm always the last one out of the water and the first one in as well. So, yeah.
Whenever I do my clinics, I do these triathlon clinics, open water entry, you've done them with me.
Yeah.
I always say, even if you're going to swim by yourself, go down there and hang out until you see someone else swimming by themselves, and then go up and introduce yourself and say, hey, I know you're going. How far are you going? Can we at least be in the water together? That is a better strategy than I'm going to go ahead and just jam by myself, and now I'm at risk. And I can tell you a personal experience. Went out to the shores, me and a buddy, just 2 of us. And when we started, it was pretty calm. And by the time we got out to the buoy, it was just rocking. And I would have felt way more uncomfortable if I didn't have him there. He's a little stronger swimmer than me. So we had a little chat on, let's get back in. Let's get back in sooner than later. And so, speaking of, are you checking tides? Is it Ava asked, checking tides before you jump out there?
Totally. Okay. So there's 2 apps I'd recommend. They're both free. They're both free versions. So either Surfline, and they're both meant more for surfers. Surfline's fantastic. Then I use actually one called Magic Seaweed, also a free app. I think it's got a 10 or 14 day forecast. Nice. And on both those apps, you select your exact beach. You'll go to North America, you go to Southern California, you go to San Diego, and you'll go to, say, Ponto.
Yep.
And you select your favorites, the beaches you swim at, Ponto, La Jolla, whatever they are. And you've got them. And so you're going tomorrow morning. You're trying to plan what day you're going to swim this week. You do want to base it off of tides, but also more importantly, probably wind for a lot of people, and then water temp. Maybe the 3 most, tide, wind, water temp, and surf height. Those are probably the 4 factors you want to actually look at.
Sure.
So you see, okay, tomorrow morning, it's 2 to 3 foot wave height. For most people, it's manageable, but might seem sizable. You see that it's a lower tide and it's windy. So low tide, windy with sizable surf is going to make for a tough entry exit. It's going to be breaking closer to shore. So you have less chance to kind of build momentum and get out there, and less depth to go under those waves. That becomes more technical. So yeah, definitely look at your surf app, either Surfline or Magic Seaweed. That's going to help you know, okay, this is my best option to pick for how I'm feeling right now.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Random question. Are those all records behind you?
Yeah, I've got more as well. So I love the ocean, but I also love music. Like, this is like my passion.
I love it.
And before we had our first child, this was my first child. Yeah. And yeah, we'll have you guys over soon. Like this becomes like the centerpiece. We don't have a TV. Music is like, I always say, all right, pick out some records that you want. Let's put them on.
Well, and vinyl doesn't cry at 3 a.m. So
no, it does not. It does not. Yeah, I'm surprised there's no crying babies on either of our ends right now. I thought we would have some like dueling babies going on. But.
Well, I'm at the clinic, so I've avoided that. But is your program open and running? Are you back up and having people meet up for swims right now?
Yeah, this is week 2. So what we've been doing is very modified. In each group, we already have lifeguards that are members and volunteers every week. We have the active lifeguards. We have paddle boards and or kayak, depending on the location. So we always have paddlers, lifeguard support, and then key leaders. So we have our key leaders, and say in San Diego, we've got 6 of them on any given day. Right now, what we're doing, rather than having 50 people in the water at once, we're having small groups of 4 to 6 people with that key leader in the group. So
Nice.
keeping the group small and spread out. And then when we meet on the beach, we're also spread out in different parts of the beach.
Perfect.
So it's different. It's much more casual than it was before, but we're just trying to keep with the protocol right now.
Sure. Well, I think you're setting an example, because if you all of a sudden
Yeah.
go, let's get together, 50 people,
We're back.
stand right next to each other.
Yeah.
I think the message isn't correct. And we do that in the clinic. In our clinics, we're fully masked up. We have plexiglass.
Yeah.
We have it all. Partly because I want to tell our community, hey, we take this serious. We want you safe, so on and so forth.
Totally.
And there's certainly people that have different opinion on what they should and shouldn't be doing. But we just feel like even when we're working out, our requirement is if you're going to see me, I got to have my mask with me. I got to be close by. And that's important to us because our community is so important to us. And I think it's as important as getting out there and being active again and doing it. And I love that you're doing that, because it's like, hey, I can get both worlds. I can still feel safe.
Yep.
I can keep myself protected, but
Totally.
but I can also be out there and doing this. And I can be around a community that, regardless of my level, I can start to work my way into this. And I think you've always talked to me about like that beginner. You don't always like them in your group to start. You'd rather do some training with them one-on-one and build them up, because safety is such an ordeal for you. That smaller group might allow a newer person to join, but you want to know that person, you even though you have help and leaders and so forth, my understanding is you're not one-on-one, so you can't totally watch everything. So it's kind of like, even though I'm coming up, I'm going to meet your group, I'm responsible for me and my safety and being a decent enough swimmer to get in and out. And then if I need real help, entry, exit, my comfortability, I just need to hire you one-on-one or one of your coaches and do that, right?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, our thing is like, we love being a melting pot of all backgrounds, abilities, ages. Yeah. And we truly are. Like almost every one of our groups, we have beginner to Olympian, like literal Olympian, like in all of the groups. And I do pride ourselves on that, because we're inclusive, we're a community. And even if you are that true beginner, come out and we have someone there to help you, but you'll probably realize it's going to take some sort of one-on-one work likely to get you to the point where you're going to feel confident to be in the open water with the big groups. It can be intimidating to be out there with 50 people and it's one of your first times. So for me, it's more like, I don't want you to set yourself up for a bad experience. Come out, meet the people, do a beach camp with us, have fun. But and then let's talk about doing work on the outside of that.
That's very similar to my clinics, because my clinics are almost always people that have never done a triathlon. So 70% of the people doing my clinic haven't done a triathlon. And really, I'm teaching them swim, bike, run. But when we're doing an open water course like Solana Beach, we're teaching people how to get in and out of open water. And I don't want those 30, 40 people in the water. These are all new swimmers. I couldn't possibly, hey, I hear one. I hear a screamer.
Yeah, it's happening. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't want to put people at risk. And if you have a bad experience the first time you jump in, you're not going to want to come back. So I think that's really important to start having really quality experiences. I think we're kind of talking about just, the swim aspects of things and getting in open water. And I mean, even in a pool, it's swimming is swimming to some extent. But the one thing I'm curious about is, are you programming? Are you creating a program concept of almost a periodization? Or how do I build up? How are you recommending to swimmers? Do you have resources you like to send them to? That's a good question. It was, what are verbal cues that will help improve my swim performance? What are your recommendations on programming?
Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a lot there. And so I'll start by saying that swimming is largely technique. And I mean, can I quantify it? Not necessarily. Like you hear people say, oh, it's 90% technique. It's probably something like that. It's maybe at least 75% techniques. That's why you can see people of all body types be really fast in the water, which tells you, okay, it's not because they have more body fat, or it's not because they have more muscle. It's not because they're longer. Those things can certainly help. Yeah. But techniques and efficiency in the water is the name of the game, especially in the open water. So now you've got water that has much more of a dynamic nature to it. So the nuance of adjusting your stroke in real time to the conditions becomes that much more technical, like insanely technical, where it's almost like this unconscious adjustment constantly to figure out how to maximize potential in the water. So do I program? Yes, I love programming. I love having my hand in the athlete's big picture training beyond just an hour in the ocean once a week. The programming is not traditional. It's not like I'm just writing workouts for you. That is a big piece of it, but I'm writing in the quality piece. So I'm trying to consider, okay, so if I'm giving you 3,000-yard workouts, you've got 4 of those weeks, you're at 12K a week kind of thing. What is that load going to do to your body by that 4th swim? And what should be the focuses on the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th swim as far as mechanics go, as far as open water tactics go, and integrating some of the sighting, in, let's say, into your stroke. The sighting is lifting your head, which can be a whole other slew of things that happen because of that, that otherwise in the pool, you wouldn't be practicing, you wouldn't be considering. So I like to improve. Am I back? It's all right. It's critical. So I think the other side of the question was, maybe even if you don't have a coach, not programming, what are you saying in your head? What are the verbal cues in your head to keep you in the right direction? My best advice is to first try and understand and discern what are your biggest weaknesses in the water. Or if you can't even quite grasp that, what are the things you want to focus on? So you've read these articles, let's say in Triathlete Magazine or a swim journal or something, and you know you want to focus on your head position, you want to focus on perhaps your kick, something to do with your pool. So you've got these 5 aspects, let's say.
Yeah.
So you want this mental check sheet in your head of these 5 things, and you want to cycle through those. So that alone gives your brain a job, and it's going to, again, distract from all the negative self-talk and stuff, gets it out of your head. So it keeps you focused on your form. It passes time better. And then you're also swimming the best you can possibly swim in the open water. So go into every workout, especially open water, with a mental check sheet to go through those things.
Yeah. It's really interesting you say that, because as a triathlete, I played professional soccer, and if I'm 10 minutes to game time, I have headphones in, and the most 311, I don't know if you know that band, but 311 is rocking, and it's swear words and it's hard, and I'm getting fired up because you know, the chemicals in my body and brain need to kick in for me to be ready to go.
Yeah.
Triathlon and swimming to me is a little bit different, where when I would get to the race, I didn't want to be amped up at that point, right? I wanted to be calm, and I wanted to be thinking through the process, and only at a specific time did I want to amp up. And the nice thing about like running and cycling is I can use all the muscles and mass movements, and I'm good to go. But with swimming, I don't want to lose technique for the value of something else, which is just energy. And people try that, and they just try to mash the water, and we don't see the quality. And that's why you can see someone that maybe isn't good form and they're poorly fit on a bike, but they're kicking your butt, and it's because they're just strong. But in the water, I've seen an 8-year-old kick my butt because her form is so good that that's such an important piece of this. And I think when you're talking about motivation, I personally think in swimming, motivation comes from continually gaining success, feeling that catch in the water, or I'm a little closer to your feet than I was at the last swim. That to me is what helps me in terms of the pool. You know, and Caleb asked a question, and I'm not totally sure what the question is, Caleb, but you're talking about for triathlon training, you know, do you guys practice how your form gets messed up? And you wrote by the pod. I don't know if you were saying by the pool or by the current or whatever, but certainly in a pool, form is so much easier to maintain. You talked about it. It's like being on a treadmill. I can hit the same stroke. But when I got current and I got everyone kicking me in the face and I got people running into me, it's a different swim. And that's why I think being in open water in a group is so important.
Totally. And that was more my question, Brian's. I've done a couple triathlons, and I was a competitive swimmer growing up, so I've got good technique, but you get 20 people around you that are all thrashing, and you're getting pummeled by the peloton or whatever.
Yeah.
Swimming.
It's funny.
Do you practice that?
Yes, we do. There's a great commercial back in the day that is,
I remember this,
like Cliff Bar or something.
Cliff Bar,
yeah. This guy runs in, and his buddies are just taking poles and just beating him down. What we teach, so in a pool when you're training, you've done this, Caleb. You've gotten in, you drafted, right? And people always drafting in the pool. What are you talking about? But really good swimmers can sit on someone's feet. But in a pool, it's consistent. What I like to do is get that group of 4 or 5 people, and you're now learning where do I sit? And when someone's swimming next to me, because when I talk to my triathletes, they're always saying, well, this lady just kept running into me. And I would say, well, if we had a drone and we thought, was it you swimming off or was it, and other people will get done with their swim and they say, man, that swim was really long. And I'm like, well, sure it was, because you did this the whole time. So sighting in open water is so different because there's no line to look at. And I think that's a really, really important piece of the puzzle, which is it's not just open water swimming, but it's practicing all these techniques and teaching your body how to adapt and how to have form and how to have, because form does change, but that doesn't change what you're trying to accomplish. So, in a pool, every time my hand hits the water, I'm right where I want to be. But now I reach into the water and the wave has now dipped and I got a foot that I got to drop into. So those are things you obviously work on. When we do our open water training, we certainly work with the athletes on that.
So to your point, Brian, to what Caleb's asking, that's the beauty and frustration of the open water, is that it's always changing. So my easy blanket advice to all my athletes is always, you're either prepared or you're unprepared. And we want to be prepared, obviously. And to be prepared, you have to be out there training in variable conditions. Get out there on the days when the wind's chopping up the lake and it's, eye level and it's really a big disturbance. Get out there in small groups and practice drafting in different formations and taking pulls, kind of like the way you would on a bike or a piece of Peloton. I do a drill. It's pretty fun with 3 to 5 people, similar to a train in the pool from Masters. Have you heard of that? Or like a pace train or a ladder or a snake, where you're all in alignment. And then the person in the back takes a surge and passes and takes their pull. Person in the back passes. And it's a constantly flowing thing. So you're learning to feel that channel when you are actually drafting the water, which is a real thing. And then you take your surge and then you settle in. That's a fun drill. So simply, you've got to get out there in different conditions. Get out there with buddies who have a similar vision of wanting to practice the tactics of open water. Because we could talk on sighting and navigation for an entire episode, and maybe we could touch on it a little bit. But it is so technical and takes so much time. The learning curve is infinite. And that's why I think there's a lot of rewarding nature to open water, because you can always be thinking about some small nuanced thing and the cause and effect. It's golf's like a game of inches. So is open water swimming.
100%.
Yeah.
I think video, I love seeing video of my swim. I talked to you, we know Swim Labs is a spot where you do video analysis.
Yep.
There's so much value in seeing what your stroke looks like, because so many people come to me and they say, hey, I have pain in my shoulder. What is it from?
Yeah.
And I can diagnostically determine, hey, you have some impingement or whatever. But in the end, I like seeing them swim, because then I can really see where the technique fault is. What I also learned in working with you and a lot of the high level swimmers is, even it's no different than golf, you said, is even though they're really savvy, they've swam their whole life, they still find faults and have to switch them back or tweak them, because they'll find, I started to cross over more than I do, or I have something funky going on, or I'm not turning my hip as much. So I think, for us as a practitioner looking at biomechanics, I'm going to look at the sport I'm studying. So if someone comes in, they say my back hurts, well, what do you do? How'd you hurt it? I want to see them do it. I don't have them lay on a table for the whole time. Mm-hmm. Same with swimming. Show me what it looks like. So I'll either recreate it here, or I want someone filming them in a pool so I can see it. And once I can see that, and I love it, if I can get it above water and below water, even better,
Yeah. No, same, Brian. When someone comes to me and saying, hey, my shoulder hurts in the water, and as we're working together and working up to a certain load of 15K a week or something, and they ask why, there's no way I can answer that why until I see them. I can probably guess. There's a number of maybe 2 or 3 things that are probably going wrong in their stroke that are causing this impingement or overloading of the deltoids. Yeah. But I've got to see it. Otherwise, it's way too intricate for me to say, okay, why don't you just try this? Yeah. And how can I know that they're trying this in the way that I intended? Totally. So it really takes the specific movements of the sport to understand what's going on and what's breaking down that whole kinetic chain of stuff.
Well, I mean, how many times I give a home exercise program and I'm assuming it's being done correctly. And
Oh, yeah.
Now that we have telehealth, we're in people's homes and we're like, oh, you're not doing that at all like we showed you. So, it's good.
Totally.
And Sandra asked a question, being new to open water, about the nerves and entry with larger waves. Any advice on that?
Yeah. So kind of like I mentioned before, maybe several of those things. Find a group, find people who are patient, who like you, who will stay there with you and are not just out there to hammer out some yardage. Like that's probably not your group right now. And then find the environment that you're going to feel comfortable in. So take it easy and don't put any big expectations on yourself to achieve distance, time, pace right now whatsoever. So if that means leaving the Garmin at home, I say do that. And in fact, I almost always leave the Garmin at home when it comes to open water stuff, unless I'm working with a high-end athlete that needs to achieve a certain thing for a race coming up. Otherwise, go off of feel. Like how is it making you feel? And the mental piece, again, that's the one thing that's going to hold you back more than anything else. Yep. We can all probably get in the ocean. We can all probably get past the surf with some help. But to do it most efficiently, we've got to have our brain in the right place. So set yourself up for success, Sandra. I would go in a place where it's pretty mellow and with people who support you.
My other suggestion to that would be when we're talking about swimming and open water entry is just like any sport, we need to work on aspects of the sport. So much of the time our mindset around swimming, open water is show up and I still want to work out. I want to make sure I still get a workout. Where sometimes you need to go do your swim, do your workout, but then spend the last 30 minutes entry, exit, sure. over and over and over, and never going really past the head, just getting there, diving, work on the entry, come back out. And that's what we do in my clinic because I personally don't care right now if you can get to the buoy and back. What I want to know is, can you get in this surf and can you get out? And that's techniques we work on. And my only advice with something like large surf is get coaching, because I was at the LA Triathlon the year that there was a wave that was 20, 30 feet in the air. And there's a photo, if you ever want to look on Google, you Google LA Triathlon, huge wave. And I'm in that photo somewhere. And literally, I'm so scared and so white. And it took like my buddy going, dude, we got to time this. And you just got to get through that wave. And once you're there, and the best part is if you could get through the wave, you were going to place because no one else could get through these waves. So, and I wouldn't want a new swimmer experiencing that. And that was me after years of triathlon. I wouldn't want someone getting that stress,
Totally. Well, and again, I think being easy on yourself, knowing that this could be like a lifelong thing for you to get through. So there's no way to like fast track this. You don't need to get to point A to point Z in a certain amount of time. Have fun with it and know, okay, if you go out there one day and get pummeled by a wave, that's okay. And you probably will not be getting hurt from that. And you probably will get pummeled by a wave again. And I know Bryan and I both have gotten crushed by waves since that LA Triathlon. It does happen sometimes, but
I felt like there was value in it. There was value in me experiencing that and recognizing that I could hold my breath. I could get beat around a little bit and come up and calm myself down, because that's really valuable. Because the worst thing you can do is panic, and we don't want that, right?
Yeah.
And that kind of leads into the waves I can't control. And so now I end up having faults in my swim that start causing pain. Yep. And sometimes we have pain historically just swimming in a pool, and that's because we're doing repetitious things. And then sometimes we have injuries from, I don't have something consistent. Now I'm doing some modification. And obviously I see a ton of injuries with this. And the biggest question I always get is the rotator cuff. And I always say the last thing you want to swim with is your rotator cuff. Because if you're swimming with your rotator cuff, guaranteed it's going to be injured. And so I share with people, and I get nervous here sharing my desktop because I have way too much stuff on it. But let's see if I can share this here in a sec. But that's such an important, piece of this, because if you can see my screen. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So here's the rotator cuff. And The biggest one we have problems with is this supraspinatus. So this comes right over the top of the shoulder and underneath this upper trap. So everyone has that upper trap tightness for sure. I don't know anyone that's ever massaged this upper trap and hasn't been sore. And here's that tendon. And the problem is we get that impinged. So here's your acromion. The joint itself of the shoulder is right here. And so look how small these muscles are. And so many of you have done the rotator cuff exercise, which you don't often see at Rehab United because, again, I don't want you swimming with this. You don't do anything in the world. Like, you don't open a door like this. You don't hug your friend like this. This is not a normal motion. And so when I start giving people activities and exercises, and in particular, let's just talk about swimming. This is not the same as this, right? And so I want you to see the muscle I would really like you swimming with. And I'll show you that, Brian, then you can give your thoughts too. Is not going to be big enough here. All right, I'll find another one. But here's your lat. And you can see that lat goes from the mid back all the way to the shoulder, all the way down to your pelvis, and all the way back up the spine. So it's a huge muscle. And that's what I want you swimming with. And I think that's such an important piece of the puzzle where mechanically, when I get into that position, Bri, I talk about that as I'm pulling, I'm really turning my body. And then now I'm aligning this big power lever arm as opposed to trying to swim with this hinge. Talk to me about your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So first of all, from my understanding, the lat is the largest muscle group in your upper body. Yeah. Largest muscle rather. So that alone tells you that as a primary mover, it's got some power potential, right? Where these four little muscles are really vulnerable, really delicate.
Yeah.
And that should be a secondary role of rotation and setting up your paddle, being your arm, to be in the proper posture to then power backward with these big guys.
100%.
So, yeah. So I think the problem lies within a couple of things. The advice that I hate hearing, I've never said it myself, is reach. When you hear people say reach, what you get here is hyperextension, and you're out of like this pocket back here. So your scapula is like rolled up and forward, and you're literally isolating your deltoids. And then beyond that, the problem is you're starting to drop your elbows. So you've hyperextended, then the elbow is starting to drop down, and you're all here in this front head.
Correct.
And you don't even have the chance to get the elbow and arm back up at that point once you've started that range of motion like that. So, Brian, I feel like you want to talk on that. Yeah, go for it.
No, I think you're saying, you don't need to be a physical therapist to get it, right? And so that's the point. So I always remind people that the shoulder's like a golf ball on a tee, and they need to be aligned. And if you're swimming and you have force out here, like you're talking about, water pushing up on your hand, elbows dropping, what you've done is taken the glenohumeral joint and smashed it up against the scapula. Mind you, you've asked your scapula not to upwardly rotate properly. So now it's actually collapsing down. And when you have a tendon between two bones, that's never a good thing. I want to get in that position and keep this stable. And then as I pull through, I'm creating force through a bigger muscle group. And that's where the rotation comes in. And again, the studies don't show that I create more stability in this fashion. In fact, the studies show if I can put my shoulder in the position I want it to be in, create torque, and then from that position, I can create value from either a glute, a lat of some nature. And it's no different than doing lifts with a squat mechanic using your glutes. And instead you have a lazy back, and now the back takes the hit. So the reason the rotator cuff gets injured is because it's doing more work than it's supposed to.
Yeah.
We just wanted to put the shoulder in the right position and create stability. And that's the shoulder blade being tucked flat against that rib cage, and then having the shoulder blade move in the same direction as the shoulder. So when we get into that position, I need protraction or retraction here relative to what I'm doing. And that's an important step. And I'm going to show a couple exercises that you guys can utilize. One, mobility is vital. Most impingement, honestly comes from lack of mobility. So poor posture over time. Now, when I get my shoulder overhead, and a simple test we do is you just are going to bring your arm overhead, and can you get it into 180 degrees or not? And a lot of people can only get their arm to that position. So immediately, if you can't get your shoulder blade to go all the way, now I'm stuck. And people will come to us, I don't know why my shoulder keeps getting impinged. Well, that's a problem. Number two is, if you do me a favor at home, just slouch a little bit, just kind of relax, and then bring your arm up and see how high you can bring it up. Okay. And then now stand up real tall from your mid back and do the exact same position. Right? So think about a couple things that happen like that in swimming. One, because our eyes, where our eyes go is where our feet go to some extent, Bri, right? I mean,
yep.
If I don't have my hips and feet flat, now I start doing this, that creates this rounded posture. And now I'm in that impingement position. So body position in the water really matters, and thinking about what's the influence of my hips and my thoracic spine relative to my shoulder, that's vital. And so we wouldn't just treat your shoulder. We're going to go after hip mobility. We're going to go after thoracic mobility. This is kind of the number one simple mobility exercise that we share. And you guys should be able to see this. You can see that video?
Yep.
Very simple. Split stance, thumb up to the sky, squat, and then drive the hand all the way over the top. And if you notice, that's allowing the shoulder blade to hinge. That's allowing the shoulder blade to move in the same direction. And this is our rotator cuff program. This starts to challenge the rotator cuff while the hip is going through specific motions. So I'll show it to you one more time. This one is really key. Notice at the top, she's off her back heel. Hip is fully extended. Shoulders all the way up next to the ear. That's a really good position right there. And that's just the sagittal plane. So then we move into the frontal plane, which is going to be the side motion, which is really important because we actually use this side frontal plane motion in swimming more than you think. Notice how clean that line is. And you can switch the foot too. You don't have to have the right foot or left foot in front. And then finally, when we go through the rotator portion of this, or the rotation portion of this, the important thing is getting some dissociation. And what that means is allowing the shoulder blade to go first, proximally, and distally I start to finish. Because if you think about the swim position, I'm going to start with a proximal move to get to a distal result. What's your thoughts there, B?
Yeah, well, I've done this program with you, Brian, and it saved my shoulder. So I firsthand can tell you that stuff's really good, and it's simple. When I did that, I remember you adjusting my hips more than anything else, having me kind of drive and lead through my hips a little more. Correct. Which is not much different than swimming. Swimming, you want to be leading with the hip. And so before, when I was getting on the point of most common errors with posture, one is the reach, so shoulder. Two, head position, which you addressed. Head too high or too low. Spines out of alignment in the same or similar way. And then the third piece really is core and hips. So core stability and function, and then the role of the hips, both with timing and just the focus of what the role is itself. So for me, that was always one of my problems, is that my hips kind of stayed more flat in the water, and I had a really good shoulder rotation and mobility. So I was almost on two planes. My shoulders were rotating well, and my back half was pretty flat. That's super common. Yep. And that creates a large disconnect head to toe, and also a large disconnect from transfer of power from top loading phase to the payout there at the back.
Correct. And the other thing that goes right through the front of your shoulder is that bicep tendon. So if you kind of make a muscle and resist it, you can kind of feel the tendon that goes through that groove. And we see one, excessive rotation forward, right? But you're talking about in your case where you're getting one part of your body to move and rotate and the other not to. Mm-hmm. So the problem with that is now when I get into that position, at some point I'm going to have to use a muscle group. And if my hip's not allowing the slingshot effect, meaning if I rotate my hip the right amount of degrees and I have the kick where I want it. So I've always thought people didn't realize, but as soon as they bent their knees during kicking, they lost the ability to extend the hip. So you actually went flexion at the hip, flexion at the knee. And whenever I flex, it's the equivalent of sitting with a bad posture in swimming. Never good for the shoulder, because now I have no ability to open up the hip and create torque again through that nice long pull. And so again, my point in getting to this is 3, 4, 5 people that registered for this asked a question about, how do I bulletproof my shoulders? How do I make sure my rotator cuff is strong? Mm-hmm. And it's a very controversial thing that we get into is we don't encourage a rotator cuff banded work not because it can't help, because it can. I don't have a problem with you taking bands and doing this. Like, I don't have a problem with that. But if you're coming to me saying, hey, I need to prevent injury, I'm going to take that shoulder through multiple angle of mechanics and get strong. You talked about core. I'm going to show you one more video here. This is a core exercise we want to do. And then I got to really think about biomechanics. Can the hip connect to the mid-back? Can that allow the shoulder blade to move? That's the number one thing in injury prevention of the shoulder. Because if I got a shoulder blade that stops moving, I got problems. Because something much longer, which is my hand, is going to still move. Because I have an object I want to grab. I want a water piece that I want to reach into. That's risky. Because now it's the classic move of guy reaches back to grab his briefcase or computer in the back of his car and yanks it forward. Boom, there goes the knee. Why? Because I no longer have my hip. I no longer have my lat. All I have is bicep tendon, supraspinatus. Super risky. So super dangerous. Women grabbing purses, same deal. They're hurting something because they don't have the glutes, the hips. I want my hips to really swim for me. That's where I can get that power. And then I want to make sure when I create the lever, I'm in a really good sound position. So I'm going to show you this ground matrix. This came from us working with the Navy SEALs. And they said, you know what? We have to be in these really funky positions, and we need core stability, we need shoulder stability, and we need to swim really long distances. So we built this program where we can go weight shifting in all 3 planes of motion. Now, this is a simple way to start, way up high on a box. And the important piece is even though you're seeing the left arm move in this case, we're really talking about a weight shift. And I'm going to can you still see me?
Yep.
All right. So let's break that down where you're not bringing the hand up. So I'm going to go plank on elbows, and I'm going to go forward, side to side, and rotational. Let me get out of here. All right. So then I can start to reach and drop. So watch that shoulder drop, drop, drop. And then when I go through an open rotation position, what does that kind of look like? I mean, that looks like that bottom shoulder that's ready to pull right as my other hand's ready to go in. So we created this for these guys because they're always climbing on that shoulder. And if you can do this on the ground, multiple reps with a 5-pound dumbbell in your hand, that's bulletproofing your shoulder. That you'll see anyone that we worked with pre-triathlon, they're doing a push-up matrix, hands in front, hands in back, fingers in, fingers out, because we want that shoulder to get strong in all those different motions. And then we're teaching them the ground matrix that creates this really, really strong, stable shoulder. And more than anything, we're letting that shoulder blade move where we want it to and create stability there.
That's good stuff, man. I love that. You're giving me some new ideas too. Even the push-up matrix, stuff I used to do when I was maybe a little bit more into strength training, like college, 20s. But that makes really functional sense to put your shoulder in different positions going through that range of motion. That's cool.
Yeah, and I think if we don't recognize that our shoulder is so dynamic and it's a ball and socket joint, but it's not deep. Like the hip joint's really, really deep ball and socket joint. The shoulder's not. So its risk of dislocation, subluxation can be much greater, right? So that's an important piece of the puzzle. And it doesn't mean you have to do, 185-pound shoulder press. So we take the dumbbell, and the dumbbell matrix for us is one of the foundational movements that we go through, taking that shoulder through all those different mechanics.
Hey, Bryan. So
Yeah.
one of the controversial things I always get asked is what the legs should be doing in the open water as far as kicking goes. I won't get into that, but
Yep.
for you, how do you keep your legs strong for swimming? Like, what's your best advice on keeping the legs strong for swimming specifically?
Sure. So the thing about swimming that and I know I kind of get a sense of what you're talking about, controversial, right? Are my legs doing the work?
Yeah.
Are they just keeping me floating? I like to think of the hip flexor and the glute as key indicators of whether or not I can create endurance. So if I can swim for 200 yards and I can keep good hip position, that's great, but I need to do that for a longer period of time. So we actually take people through the positions, same exercise I just showed you, but now I'm going hip extension, right? So now I'm getting hip extension, Swiss ball, whatever. But I start getting my swimmers into more endurance-based land programming. So not having to squat super heavy weight, but rather, can I squat a moderate weight 50, 100 times kind of thing? And now I'm creating muscular endurance because that's an important piece. Plank is more of a swimmer's type core exercise than it would be for a baseball player, because they need their core to be able to tolerate these short movements as opposed to this big swing. And in terms of gross leg stability, I'm going to take them through my core group of exercises: squats, lunges, and single leg squats. And there's a gazillion variations. If you go to YouTube and go to Rehab United on YouTube, and you know it's the right one because it's a blue logo, like our blue logo versus the red one. And you can see strength for runners, strength for swimmers. There's a bunch of exercises on there. But in general, for the legs, it's not going to change for me. I'm going to go through squats, I'm going to go through lunges, and I'm going to go through single leg exercises. Now I create a foundational strength for my swimmers. And then what I'm going to do is tweak the accessory work to allow for the hip to be straight, because I don't want a flexed knee. I don't want to create a squat movement for a swimmer. So that's where I'm going to take plank positions and take the hips through these motions: out, cross, cross. Again, we call that the lower extremity ground matrix. So we get in a plank position on elbows or hands. Maybe sometimes a Swiss ball is in front of us, and I'm going to show you since I have them. That's the convenience of YouTube, is I can just go search it real quick. So give me a second. And yeah, I mean, it's so vital to be strong. And what I find so many of our athletes that, sorry, hold on a sec. So many of our athletes that come to us are bypassing strength for the sake of their sport. So cyclists that they don't have the time to do the strength work because they're riding so much. That would be another thing that we talk about, is like, where are you putting in your programming this key stuff that really matters, and making sure you're not bypassing that. So here's an example of that exercise. So the lower level would be, have the hip be supported by a Swiss ball. I'm on my hands and I'm going through the side to side and rotational. So everything you see we're doing obviously is 3 planes of motion. So I'm going to cross the hip over, which again, I'm a fan of. Looks a little bit more like maybe not what our legs would be doing in the water, but what the hips might be doing in the water, right? And then if I really want to challenge myself, and you'd be surprised how difficult this is. I give this to a lot of athletes and they try to show it to me on camera and they fall off the ball. So that's why I showed you level 1. I have an athlete that's getting stronger and stronger, and I give her an exercise and she's just like annoyed that I keep watching her fall off the ball. And she then gets super motivated. And I threw this one in here. If you saw there at the end, this is a scissor and then bilateral hip turn. That's a very good consistent move that you would be able to see in the swim position, right? And look what my shoulder's going through. That's not unlike what you would start to see, other than it's a straight arm. I don't want to pull with a straight arm. I get that. But the shoulder itself is going through a closing position or an adducted position. So as I'm in the swim, Bri, you know this, but as I'm pulling the water past my hip, I'm going through that torsion. So my left hand is sliding right past my hip. And even though, again, my hand's not moving in this position, the shoulder blade is still getting something that looks, feels, and smells like what we might be doing in the swim stroke. That's one of my favorites. It's a very good exercise. You don't need a Swiss ball. You could be doing that on the ground in a plank for sure. So it's a good exercise. Sophie doesn't agree with my exercise. It's obvious.
Yeah, I may need to wrap it up here in a second just to help out with the baby, but
yeah, no, we're good. We're kind of at that question and answer point of this anyway. The biggest thing I tell people when it comes down to injuries, I'm a big fan of getting immediate help, and human nature says, "Oh, this will go away. This will go away." Like even you're having coffee with me, and you're like, dude, I've been hurting for like 6 weeks. I'm like, well, that's your own darn fault because you know me and you didn't pick up the phone. And Rehab United, like our whole mission is to be this resource urgent care for orthopedics for this entire community. And there are people on this call that are from all over the country. So this isn't nowadays, get on a computer just like this with me, Bryan. I show you, hey, show me your arm movement. And I can see that impingement and I can show you what to do. We can figure this out. And so important to get something looked at because it's the difference between missing out on swimming, running, cycling, whatever your sport is. It's about not being able to do it versus being able to do it. And rather than it take weeks and weeks on end to heal, let me get it right away because it might be something super simple. Just like when you see someone swimming, you're like, hey, do you know you're crossing your right hand all the way across your body? No, I didn't even notice. You fix that. Now it's gone. Now totally. I don't have that impingement. So that's important.
Yeah.
So obviously we appreciate you guys being here. Do you guys, we have a moment for some questions. If anyone has them, you guys have been asking questions throughout, which is great. We motivated people because they went off to swim at Moonlight, or we have another person that went off to do another swim session. So we're good.
Nice.
Is Soph right there? Can we see her?
Yeah, I'm gonna grab her here. Corey, I'll grab Soph.
I'll
grab her in a second.
So,
I'll grab her. You can go.
It seems like maybe there's not a ton of questions left. We did get one question on neck pain, discomfort. All the videos I showed are on our YouTube account. Neck stenosis, neck position is super important as well. We have a whole neck program online. But stenosis is not a reason to stop doing what you're doing. So anyone with stenosis and they're trying to get back to swimming, have pain, numbness, tingling, whatever, that is fixable and manageable. And there's no reason that you should have any of those issues. If you get on our YouTube account and you can't find a video that you're looking for, some might be private. Just email me. It's Bryan with a Y at Rehab United. And you can email me anytime. You can go onto either of our websites. You can find Bryan and say, hey, I need some help on swimming. He's happy to help. And we're a resource for people. I love having you in our community because I have all my triathletes that I'm like, they're stressed about open water swimming. And I'm not, although I do it and I coach it, that's not my role. And so I get them to your group and they love it. And that's a really important piece. John, yes. Hey, buddy, it's good to see you. There is a recording, and it'll be posted on our YouTube page as well. So you can watch this, you can share it. I ask anyone that's not on Instagram and Facebook and likes Rehab United or the Swim Mechanic, and I'd love for you to go back into the chat and like our pages, follow us, share what we're doing. And this was just fun to hang out with you. Hey, girl.
Say hi, Soph. No, it's been super fun. Yeah, and thanks, guys, for staying on the whole time. I feel like we could do this for like a half day. Bryan and I could talk about this for too long, which maybe means we should do this again sometime with some other topics. There's a lot of swim-focused stuff we could dive into. Totally. But yeah, as far as One with the Ocean goes, it's a free group. We're a nonprofit, all donation-based. Come out, get with the group. It's Sunday mornings, 7:30 a.m. at Moonlight Beach. in San Diego, Tuesday mornings, 7 a.m. at La Jolla Shores. And then we have locations.
Didn't you just do a beach cleanup?
We do beach cleanups every session. So we have some big ones. It's a big piece. So we do beach cleanups, we do lessons, and then once a month we offer free lessons to underserved populations. So get involved, come check us out. onewiththeocean.org is the site. But yeah, it's been fun, Bryan. I love doing this with you.
Awesome. Me too. That was good. I mean, I think it was great because I talk about injury all the time, but there's so much value in just getting information from an expert that has swam his whole life and is now doing something really cool, which is helping people love the ocean even more. I think
totally.
You and I are extremely aware of the impact of one, what we're doing to our waters and the risk that presents itself. And if we're not careful and mindful of how we treat our ocean, you know, there's already masks showing up in the damn ocean, and it's just like,
yeah, yep.
You know, and I wish we realized how valuable that resource is. PBS just did a special on the aquifers and where water use is coming from and the droughts in all over the world. And it is eye-opening. So that's a really good watch. But I feel like if we can just take one step as a team and do our individual part with ourselves and our family, and not just on taking care of the ocean, but in just motivating each other and being a resource for each other. Or, you know, for me and you, like, I want my kid to grow up swimming and loving it and being comfortable in the ocean. And, you know, I grew up with a pool. That doesn't mean I was a good swimmer. So I want to make sure I'm teaching, you know, good form and so on and so forth. So
definitely
appreciate you guys being here. Thanks so much for taking your time on a Saturday. We will answer any questions, and, you know, please spread it on your social media. Say something about us that gets people to come find Bryan and myself and Rehab United.
Good to meet you guys.
I love seeing faces I know, and I love seeing some new people too. So good to see you, Liz.
Definitely.
It's been too long, girl. All right, man. We'll talk soon. Love you guys. Appreciate your time.
See you guys.
Take care.